That's all.
Okay, we are rolling, Julie.
All right.
Yeah. Hey, now I know that you took your hat off, but that was a very cool hat.
Do you want it on?
Podcast
I just want to make sure you could see me.
No, it's just really cool because I mean, I need some virtual couch swag.
Yeah, you do. You do. I can help you out. I can hook you up.
I like it. Okay, so my guest today is Julie Lee. She is the host of the ICU podcast, and welcome to the virtual couch.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No, I'm excited. I really am. And so I kind of want, if you're okay, you're a pro. I've listened to episodes of your podcast. I highly recommend people just going right in and starting at the beginning, and you tell your story. So but well, see there, I just kind of gave it away. I'm going to ask you about your story, but afterward, then they can go fact check with your episode 1, right?
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Totally.
But so I really want to kind of just jump right into your story. And then at first I really wanted to have you on to talk about your kids' book. I mean, you are I would say a woman of many hats. See what I did there? Thank you.
I like it.
But it's like the more I got into your kind of what you've gone through yourself, that what maybe even led to the podcast. Why don't we start there? Take us on a journey, Julie.
Oh yeah. Okay. So raised in Utah, I'm number 6 of 7 kids. And I grew up with a dad who was diagnosed with bipolar disorder.
Wait, and do you remember that? I mean, was that while you were in school or high school?
His diagnosis was when I was 3 years old.
Okay.
So I remember the aftermath, but his specific diagnosis, I don't know that I remember that.
Yeah.
So basically home life for us, back then, let's see, that would be mostly the 90s. These kind of things were just not talked about like they are now, right? Yeah. And medicine wasn't as good, right? Mm-hmm. We've come a long way with that. And so it was a very shameful thing. And it was something that we did not talk to other people about. I don't necessarily remember my parents coaching me not to talk about it, but it was just this very secretive thing.
Yeah. So did you not bring people around during high school? Friends wouldn't come over, that sort of thing?
No, I would bring them around. It was hard. It was hard, especially in my younger years, mostly. So my dad was out of work for about 3 years straight. And that was when I was pretty little. And then he did work, and he worked at a place where he had every Thursday off. Okay. And so I just kind of knew those days not to be around the house. Right. My dad is a very kind person. You hear about bipolar people a lot, and you hear about the crazy, crazy mania. And for my dad, it much so swung towards the depression.
Okay.
And less mania.
Yeah.
And so he was just in his room most of my childhood that I remember. He was just in his room, or I'd see him cry and have panic attacks. But what I remember was mostly the crazy, deep, dark depression. And so when I left my house and went to college, I had a closer relationship with my parents. I had a good relationship with them. Not super healthy now that I know a little bit about boundaries and things, but I cared a lot for them. And when I left for college, I just was like, peace out. I'm done with that. We're done.
Yeah.
I love my dad, but that is such a hard life. And I am just so ready to have a fresh start and not have that in my life anymore.
And had you ever had bouts of depression yourself?
No. Oh, no.
You. Okay.
No, like I am like a bubbly, happy, super, just like student council, announcing assemblies kind of person. And in fact, as a little kid, I really thought that I could help my dad. I remember snuggling with him, going in his bed and snuggling with him, watching scary movies with him. Now, I don't know that I really liked scary movies, but it was something that he and I did together.
Yeah.
And so at a very young age, I really, really thought I could always fix my parents' problems and their marriage problems and all of those things. We also had very little money with how things were. And I always was looking for ways to fix all that.
Okay.
Still, though, when I left, it was a little bit of a relief. Just to know that mental illness wouldn't be in my life anymore. Well, even when I dated my husband, I remember us having a conversation and I cried to him and I said, listen, we're getting serious here. I got to know right now, do you have any hint of this in your life? Because if you do, we probably got to break this off right now. Cause that's just never, I'm sorry, I can't do it. I can't do it. I've seen it enough. We've done it. Yep. And I can't do it anymore. And he didn't. Lucky for him, right?
Let's say, right. And that's called foreshadowing, I think, right. We see where we're headed here. Okay.
Yep.
At that point though.
And I didn't.
Okay.
I had no clue where I was headed. It wasn't even in my nightmares. Like my nightmare was marrying someone that struggled. So then when I was 21, we were living out of state. We were living in Texas, and I was in a student teaching experience, and I was working with a really, really toxic mentor teacher. Looking back in my boundaries now, I should have spoken up much sooner than I did, but I was used to people liking me. My professors loved me. I worked in elementary school all through college. The kids loved me. I've always just been just a really happy, people-pleasing type person, and this lady did not like me. And it was a ghetto school. There were dead dogs in the street, trash everywhere. So it was a pretty depressing environment anyways, but I was handling that okay. But the teacher's just complete disdain for me, glaring at me while I teach, I really started taking that personally. And I just thought if I worked harder, I could please her, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I could do that with anyone. I knew I could. And it was about 5 weeks into it, and these are like 11-hour days. 5 weeks into it that I came home, I had my first panic attack. And I remember, I think it was the day after my husband's birthday, because I like held off till after his birthday. I had a complete panic attack, and I've never, ever experienced a panic attack before.
So what do you remember about that? So what do you remember about that? I mean, the first time, do you remember what the symptoms were? Do you remember?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I remember laying on the bed and crying and shaking and not being able to stop shaking.
Okay.
And I remember my husband trying to hug me and say, hey, everything's going to be okay. We're going to be okay. And I was so certain that nothing would ever be okay. Again, there was no hope in sight, and I could not control it. I could not make it stop.
Were you surprised at how fast that came on then? I mean, did it just go to that dark of a place? Yeah. Looking back,
it's pretty obvious to me that that's where I was headed. I mean, I was not sleeping. I was at lunch. I would go into the bathroom stall and cry and shake. So looking back, it's so obvious to me that's where I was headed. But like I said, that wasn't even on my radar for myself, because I just was such a happy person. I would always, I said depression won't happen to me.
Right.
I will choose to not be depressed.
Okay. Right. So there was that.
Mm-hmm.
I can think my way through it.
Correct. Yep. Absolutely. So,
Julie, I must give you a heads up too. I'm going a little live, doing a little Instagram live right now.
Sweet. Yeah, totally.
Okay. So, I mean, but I like that you're saying that, because I think a lot of people, when they haven't had any experiences of anxiety, panic, that first time, it's first of all, it's a shock, but then it's like, okay, I should just be able to do something about this.
Absolutely.
So you start to feel helpless?
Oh yeah, I was terrified. And my husband, he'd always been able to comfort me, but I just remember thinking, dude, this brings me no comfort. Like nothing.
What did he try? What was he trying to do? Do you remember?
He was just trying to hug me and say, hey, it's going to be okay. We're going to be all right. And he was trying to, this is what we're going to do. And if you need to quit, you can, and all of those things. I'd never quit anything really.
Yeah.
But I quit that. And it was really important that I did. And I called my college liaisons, and luckily they knew me before. Okay. And so they talked to me on the phone, and I'm just uncontrollably crying. And they're like, what happened to you? What happened to you? This is a completely different person than we knew that left for Texas.
So did you, and when you say you quit, did you leave that student teaching position immediately?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't go back the next day?
Did not. I called the lady that night, or maybe it was the next day, but I called in sick. I emailed the teacher and told her I was sick, and she wrote back a very, shaming reply or whatever. Right. And she very much so was supportive of, we need to get you out of this situation. Let's bring you back to Utah. Let's get you in a classroom here. And I was like, okay. And so my husband was doing an internship at the time, and so we had to wait for him to finish his internship. So I was home alone. And my sister was like, I got this. Downton Abbey just came out. It's the best show. Just like binge listen to Downton Abbey. And I remember Downton Abbey was too heavy for me, because I was so overwhelmed just by anything hard. And so someone would die on Downton Abbey, and I was just panic attack all day long, just in and out, in and out, in and out. I tried to talk to someone there, and we in our religious area, that tried to talk to me through it on the phone. And looking back, I'm like, oh, they were just like scratching the surface. They had no idea what was going on underneath, and neither did I. So I ended up having to fly home, and me and my husband cried at the airport. I bawled all the way home. And once again, when my mom saw me, she was like, I didn't even recognize you. The girl that walked off that plane. I say, you mentioned, I think on your story, that you didn't even realize what that plane trip was like. I mean, there were stewardesses kind of handing you boxes of tissues saying, oh yeah, ugly crying. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because I couldn't keep it under control. And it was, it was a 3-hour flight. Had you thought about looking for a counselor in Texas at that point? No, because we were only going to be there about 5 more weeks. And
Gotcha.
so it just felt like, let's just get through. But it was obvious it was getting so out of control. My husband was like, wow, that's all we knew to do. We got to get you home somewhere where you can be with people. So I came home, and long story short, I got into some counseling, and I got on some medication. It took a couple different ones, and I found one that worked, and holy cow, did it help.
Yeah.
I all of a sudden had this floor underneath me instead of falling through to a basement where I could start dealing with things.
So do you remember, so you had that experience watching your dad with the bipolar, and did you have pretty negative thoughts about medications? I mean, was that I will not do that, or that will be the last?
Oh yeah. Well, and they never worked for him. My dad tried so many medications and they didn't work for him, and they gave him terrible side effects. And so, I'm a doer. I can work my way out of things. I'm a hard worker. I'm pretty, what's the word I'm looking for? Intentional. I'm pretty intentional with my time all the time. And so, this is unexpected.
So what got you to the point where you were willing to try a medication? Because I work with a lot of clients that, they are going to say, hey, just I want you to know up front that I'm not interested in being medicated. And I have to meet the client where they're at. But at times, knowing that could be the difference. So
my anxiety, so in the beginning I would call it anxiety, and then it spiraled into some pretty deep depression. And I guess all I can say is that sounds prideful. I want to say then it hasn't been bad enough. I don't know how else to say that, but there's no other options. I mean, it was panic attack constantly. And especially when you've watched your dad live that kind of hell, I saw no hope. And I had enough people who loved me say to me, this isn't you. This is something's off here. I would have done anything.
Sure.
I would have done anything.
There's a cliche I always butcher, but something about the pain of the solution is worse than the pain of the problem. I think I got that backwards. Something very clever there that people get to, and then it's okay. I'll try whatever it takes. Right.
Oh yeah. Well, and I did that. So I would get on and off medication throughout the years through my 20s. We'd go and have a big move, and I wouldn't know anyone there. And it's like I kept going to these different counselors, and we'd put a Band-Aid on it. We'd keep talking about what happened with student teaching.
Right. Okay.
And I'd be like, I'm okay with that. I think I don't know. And it wasn't until I came to Utah anyways, we've been at Notre Dame for my husband's grad school. Came back to Utah, and I finally got into a lady that specialized in childhood trauma.
Okay. And I love how you said in your story, I mean, you hadn't connected those dots at all.
No.
Okay.
Oh, people brought up therapists would bring up like my family of origin, and I'd be like, they are the best. There's nothing there. Like, I have the best family in the world. Nothing. Complete denial.
Well, I love that you say that, because as a therapist, when someone says that, I so am weary of saying, whether it's a really, or, are you protecting them? Or I know it's hard to talk about our parents in that way, but I mean, it's gotten to the point where, when I was first a therapist, I said, well, I won't force anyone to deal with their past. And obviously I can't force them, but I was going to be the therapist that never had to go to somebody's past. But man, our past is what frames kind of where we're at today. So would you remember some of those epiphanies that hit early when you started doing that?
Oh yeah. I remember my therapist, maybe it was like our third session. She said to me, is there any way you can talk about your childhood without immediately after saying, but my parents are the best. I love them so much. They're the best. They're the best. You don't know how hard their life is. They are the best.
Right.
And that she just said, I believe you. I believe you love your parents. Is there any way we can just talk about it and you not follow up with that every single time you say anything?
Right.
And that was a clue to me. All of a sudden I was like, ooh.
Here's a stretch, Julie, but or have you ever been a Wheel of Fortune fan?
I've seen it enough times.
They would give those letters, I think R, S, T, L, and N, so you couldn't guess them. It was just a given. And I kind of always say that with therapy, I always say, okay, here's the given. The given is that I know you love your parents. I know that they tried as hard as they could. So that's a given. So, you don't have to kind of go back and convince me, but exactly. Let's just kind of talk about your childhood. Right.
Yeah. Because this is about me, right? Not about my parents, it's about me healing.
Yeah.
And it was ugly, bringing out a lot of feelings. And it made me very angry at my parents for a very long time. I felt very responsible for them and their choices in their life. Mm. And also my sample pool for what depression and anxiety looked like. I had one sample pool.
Yeah, sure.
And that was my dad, who never got help.
Yeah.
I remember a therapist saying to me, I know a lot of people that struggle with depression that haven't attempted suicide. And I just was like, what? And my dad, he never completed an attempt.
Sure.
Made a lot of plans and wrote some things and things like that. But I was very aware of that at a young age. And so when I hear even the word depression, it's amazing I can even say it now, because it was so triggering to me.
Sure.
Because to me, that meant I will be a suicidal person and I may commit suicide. That is exactly the path that I saw for this happy girl that can do anything. And all of a sudden my life was over. I felt like.
So talk about, I mean, you keep driving, but I mean, I know that you had some points where you felt like, okay, I've got this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. I'd get on medication after I had my kids and the postpartum situations were over. I finally got off. And then I ended up I was off medication for about 4 months, and a lot of different things happened. My dad left the faith that I've grown up in my whole life, and he was very, very strong in that faith and became an atheist. And I had 2 sisters diagnosed with breast cancer. I was off medication. And then I read a memoir of someone's that someone had recommended to me, because their story really feels it's something I can really relate to with how I grew up. And I read it, and it sent me into the hole.
Wow.
In a way I'd never gone into the hole before. And I hit rock bottom. It was the summer of 2017.
Okay.
And it was about 4 months of constant anxiety attacks and depression. And it was
like also to feel like, hey, I've got a handle on this, and then to go back to that, to go.
Every time it was just, I hated myself. I mean, I hated myself. I felt like, if you're familiar with the Bible, I felt like Abraham with Isaac. Like, I'm like, God, this is my biggest fear and hatred of a thing, something I would never see again. And I'm struggling with it. Like, it's incomprehensible to me.
Yeah.
And so I would just do and do and do and do. I'm not someone that when I get depressed, I lay in bed all day. I'm bawling while I'm doing the dishes. I'm having a panic attack in the shower. And then I'm coming out with a smile to play Candyland with my kids. And then I take a break to walk outside for a second because I got to cry again. I mean, I will work myself out of this hole. That's what I'm made of. That's how I felt. And it wasn't until I had a therapist finally say to me, honey, she's like, and this was a different therapist. This wasn't the childhood trauma one, and a fabulous one that I still go to. She's actually been on my podcast. Loves mindfulness. She's much like you in that. But she said, I have never seen someone do as much as you're doing and have such little success. Like, it's crazy.
As far as like the mental health work, or as far as the emotional work, or as far as just in life?
Just everything.
Okay.
Everything.
Yeah.
I'm doing all the right things. I'm applying all the tools, but I'm still in this dark hole. Yeah. And she said, you are and she's like, I am not a pill pusher. I am all about finding the roots of the problem, but you are someone that I think needs medicine, and you may need it permanently.
Okay.
And that was a humbling, relieving moment for me to give that up to God.
Okay.
To give that over.
Even when you had taken it in the past and you thought, okay, this is temporary.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because therapists had I don't think I ever was given an official diagnosis of this, but they talked a lot about PTSD, because I've had flashbacks and nightmares, and I'd wake up and I couldn't get out of them and things like that. And so I always thought, well, PTSD, you work through it and then you don't struggle anymore, But something about having those 2 little babies and looking at them and I was willing to give up my pride, because I mean, the suicide thoughts were constant, and that's not me.
Yeah.
But anybody can get to that place under the right circumstances. And it took an amount of humility for me to just realize it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what anybody thinks. What matters is these babies and my family, and I matter. I'm worth it,
Right. Yeah. So talk about, I mean, are we to the point now with the scary guy, the scary man?
Oh, people seeing me. Yes. So when I was I call it the hole a lot on my podcast. When I was in the hole, there was a guy in our neighborhood and in our religious congregation that super quiet guy. And he stopped by our house randomly, and he said, I felt like I should stop by. And he's like got a shaved head and a goatee. He's this big guy. And the first time we saw him at church, we were like, dude, if I saw him in an alley, I would be so scared. He comes and he sits down next to me on the couch. And I'm just bawling. I've just been to the doctors again, and we're trying to figure out medications. And my husband, bless his heart, is just like, I don't know what to do with you. I don't know what to do. Like, what can I do for my wife? And he just sat there and he looked at me and he said, things are pretty bad, huh? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, you feel like there's no hope right now? I'm like, none. And he talked to me about his struggle with depression growing up.
Wow.
And he said, and he just looked at me in the face and he said, I know exactly where you're at. I've been there. I've been to that kind of hell, and I know exactly where you're at right now. Like, and look at me right now. There is a way out. There is a way out. And I mean, I was asking him questions like, is happiness even real? Is it even real? I don't even remember it anymore. And he was like, it is. And he said, this is depression talking, and it's okay. And there's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah.
You're going to get out of this.
I like
and that there's nothing like that.
Okay. This is depression talking. I like that. Because I often think of when we're trying to think our way out of a thinking problem. I mean, and so to everyone else around us, it's like, you're not being rational, but you know, that doesn't matter to you in that moment. Right.
Oh yeah. I mean, my husband and I think I talked about this in my first episode. We went to the splash pad with our kids, and he's like, try going down the slide, try to have fun. And so I went down this kid's slide, freezing cold water, and I felt the cold water in my face, and I got up and I was like, I wasn't thinking about depression because the cold water got in my face. He's like, go again, do it. We were trying everything. I love that you snort when you laugh, by the way. I'm so glad that you did on mine.
My composure.
Sorry.
Here we go. No, this is good. Snorting. I have one of these times I got to show people how many people send me things with pigs, related to pigs all the time. So I've got pig corn cob holders, pigs that squeeze, pigs that snort.
Oh, that's the best. I wish I had known that. I would have worn like a pig shirt or something. Oh, that's hilarious.
So, all right. So then after that point, big scary guy, kind of, you know, oh no, this is where then doesn't he say to your husband? Look at me like leading you. Is this where we get into the, okay.
Yeah, you've done your homework. You're awesome.
Right? I'm a pro,
right.
Julie.
Yeah, you're a busy man too. I appreciate it. Yeah, so he looks at her because my husband is like, I don't know what to do. Bless his heart. He has no mental illness history in his family, which in some ways I think in a lot of ways has made him the best husband for me. He has no baggage about this. Okay. And he said to the scary guy, I don't know what to do. What can I do for her? And he just said, dude, these next few weeks while medication kicks in, it's going to be rough. You just got to love her. You just got to text her, you know, during the day and say, hey, I love you. You're the best. Just be so sweet and compassionate with her. You can't fix it. You're not going to fix it, but it's going to happen and she's going to do it. But right now she just needs your love.
I didn't like that she's going to do it. You know, she's going to get through this because when you were hearing him say that, and by the way, does he know that he's the scary guy?
Yeah, he does.
Okay. Does he love that title? Yeah.
Yeah, I think he likes it. Yeah. He's like that's the thing is he's this super tough, like, and he talks like he's like, you walk by him in church and he's like, hey, Julie, like this podcast. Like he's so not what you would think of as someone that would just be so tender and compassionate, but he knows what it's like. He's just a big old teddy bear.
Love it. So when he's laying that out to your husband too, I am curious because did you feel guilty for that? Did you feel, you know, man, I feel bad that, you know, he's telling my husband that this is what you need to do for me? And I don't know if you kind of see where I'm going there, because I love that he was able to almost act as that mediator. I love that your husband was saying, what do I do? I mean, that's perfect scenario. And sometimes I have people that when they are suffering from depression, you know, and I'm kind of having a similar thing. Here's what she needs right now, or he needs, is that then if they're already kind of in this bad place, they feel like, I feel horrible that all the attention is on me, or I feel that this is all about me. And then that makes me feel worse. Or, you know, did you have those kind of feelings?
Well, when he said it, I felt relief because I was always looking for a way to fix it. And so if Rob would say, have you tried this? I'm like, oh no, I haven't tried hard enough. You're right. I'll try that. Once again, well-meaning, both of us just not used to this.
Exactly.
It took off the pressure to have someone else say to him,
I like that.
You know, I've been down this road. That's not going to work. It took it for me. It was a permission to be like, oh,
I like that.
You mean I haven't just not done enough? that was huge for me.
Okay.
It was like that. It was like when the lady said, you know, we've tried all these tools, girl, you need medication. And she was someone that I trusted and loved, and we'd worked with together for a long time. I'd called her one weekend when I was like, maybe I need to be hospitalized. This is crazy.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I like that. I know we were talking a little bit off before we started recording. I mean, that there is, and I love, excuse me, I love positive affirmations. I love positive talk. I love all of that. I mean, I'm a big fan of it. I'm the eternal optimist, but then that doesn't mean that 5 minutes from now, I'm not going to be thinking of, you know, I'll never keep this up, or I'm a fraud, or the imposter syndrome kicks in, or, you know, and that's where I think then people think wait, what's wrong with me? I know I'm just supposed to be happy. I'm supposed to just choose happy things. And that's a great place to work from. But, you know, I don't know, how many times did you try to just change your thoughts to happy?
Oh, like 8 years worth.
Okay.
I mean, I tried to learn a new instrument.
You got to tell me what it is. Here's my,
I was trying to learn the guitar. So my husband plays guitar. Like, I can pick out a little bit, but I was being vigilant. I was playing songs about Christ on the guitar, crying as I'm doing it, right? Like YouTube. I was doing so many things to serve in my church. I've always been a good exerciser, a good eater. I was doing all those things to a T. I cut out caffeine. I tried to cut out sugar. I was doing everything.
Wow.
Getting enough sleep while trying to. And I was just going. And I just thought, I can prove, like I said, I'm Christian, and I can prove to God that I'm worth helping and saving. Look at everything I'm doing here.
Hey, do you mind, Julie, kind of talking about that and about, you know, talking about your faith and Christian belief? I love the part in your story where you kind of talk about that kind of reconciling with God. I mean, do you want to talk about that?
Absolutely.
Because I hear this in my sessions a lot too. I do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You're talking about in the car, being mad at God.
Yeah.
There was a therapy session with my childhood trauma therapist where we talked about some memories I'd had and some feelings I had. And at one point she said, "Are you angry with God?" And I said, "No." Because to me, I'm like, good Christian, we don't get angry at God. Like, no.
Right.
He's like, "Okay, well, that's okay. But if you are, he can handle it."
That's the line.
I kind of thought he can handle it.
Yeah. I remember hearing that at a training I was at long ago. And to me, that was one of those epiphanies, you know?
Yeah.
He's pretty powerful. He can handle it. You know?
I went in that therapist parking lot and I sat in my car and I think the first words that just came out of my mouth is I was just like, "I'm so mad at you. I'm so mad at you right now." And I just let the tears fall. And I just told God, "This is where I'm at. And I think you should have done this differently. I think you should have saved me. This is what I think." And it was crazy how I've never felt peace like that. I don't know if in my life, because I felt like he was like, "Yeah, I know you're mad. Yeah. Thank you for talking to me about it. Thank you for talking to me about how you understand and what your expectations are, because I know you don't get it." Yeah. And it was crazy. I was like, "Oh, it's okay. It's cool that I'm mad at you. Okay." Yeah. And that's been great for me. I mean, I talk to God all day long. I'll say things in my head all day long where I'm just like, "Are you sure this is a good idea?"
Right.
"I feel like this is a dumb idea."
Yeah.
And he's fine with it. He can handle it.
Yeah.
He can.
Yeah. No, I love that. There's times in sessions where I'm just kind of like, you know, hey, need a little help right here. I'm pretending I know what I'm doing, but I'm kind of not, you know? Mm-hmm. It's right at any point. I mean, that I agree. So from there, I mean, how are you now? I mean, and is that what led to the podcast? I mean, talk about that. Yeah.
I'm great now. I am so good now. That doesn't mean that I don't have a susceptibility towards it.
Yeah.
But I live the most beautiful life that I love so much. And I never thought that would include having a susceptibility towards mental illness. Right.
Sure. Yeah.
But, I got on some good medication, and I really feel like that summer I learned that it didn't matter anymore, and that I was all in, and that I wasn't going to keep trying to get on and off medication.
Yeah.
I realized that my family was worth it. And so I got on medication, and I'm still in therapy. I usually go to my therapist, I don't know, once every other month, you know. It was crazy when I got off once weekly and then to 6 weeks. And yeah, it wasn't until I'd healed quite a bit from that I decided to start my podcast, obviously, just because I think it's really important not to be doing therapy on my podcast. That's for my therapist, right? Yeah. So I only talk about things that I have healed from and that I feel happy to share with. I feel a lot of drive because I feel like it truly was the compassion and connection of other people that saved my life over and over again. The people that really saw me.
That's okay. That's exactly what I was going to say. Talk about that. I see you, because I I love at one point, didn't you say your husband didn't want to see I see you like on the wall or something? It's kind of creepy. But, yeah, so what does that mean? Why did you title your podcast I See You?
I have a friend. This is how it started. I have a dear friend who went to the same therapist, and we actually met that way. She found a non-HIPAA way to get us in contact. She's like, you girls need to know each other.
Yeah.
Through my friend's blog. And she actually made me a bracelet that says I see you. Okay. And basically what it means is we can text each other and say, hey, like, I just had this trigger happen, or I'm having a hard day, or, you know, I'm cleaning out poopy underwear, whatever it is. And the other one can text back and just say, oh, I see you, girl. I see you. Nice. And basically I see you to us is just, I'm present with you. Like, I'm looking at you in the face. I'm connecting with you. I know what's going on with you. And I started this podcast because I really, really believe in that we need to be compassionate with each other, and we need to be connecting with people. I feel like in our culture, we are just isolating ourselves like crazy through, and we do it in the darkness. We do it through coping with pornography. We do it with anxiety, depression. I mean, depression is a demanding mistress. It wants you alone in the dark where no one else can talk to you and challenge your thoughts.
Yeah, I can keep you right here. Yeah.
Yeah. And it can make me believe anything, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I was having suicidal thoughts. That's not me, but it sounded like a pretty good idea at the time. That is why and I see these suicides in the news, and I see depression, anxiety so rampant. And I just feel like we got to do something different.
Yeah.
And to me, that includes, we need to be connecting, and we need to be having compassion for each other, because it's not working.
Yeah. So what I love about that is when I get someone that is suicidal, and that's one of the hardest parts of being a therapist, I feel like, but when you have someone there, and then it's like, okay, guess what? All rules are everything's off. We want you to live. That is our ultimate goal. And so sometimes that's where somebody then starts to then go from there to be more authentic, where they start to feel like, okay, I can learn to be a better parent or spouse, or I can ask, a new job, or I can just be myself. And it's like, man, it just breaks my heart that sometimes people have to get to that point before they feel like they are enough, before they feel like then they can say, all right, I'm worth it, And so, but then it's like, I'm with you. Like, how do we not have to get to that point for somebody to feel like they are worth change, or they are worth,
You're making me cry.
I know. I feel so bad. I start talking. Should I snort?
No, it's good. Yes, snort. No, it's okay. No, you're just making me cry, because I think that it is so powerful and important that, like you said, it's like all of a sudden, like, all hands on deck.
Yep.
Because whatever we thought was important before then, and I think for me, that's what I realized that summer, is any pride I had over, I don't want to take medication, or I don't want to do this, or I don't want to be like this. All of a sudden I was like, this is my forever family I'm dealing with. And they're worth it. And so even, obviously I had to deal with a lot of my own self-hatred, because I think that's pretty common to come with depression and anxiety when you feel it out of control. They're worth it. And so I'll do anything. Exactly. I'll do anything, because these babies, they need a mom.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're a good one, right? I mean,
I'm a good one. I'm a freaking rock star mom. I am, but I need medicine.
Yeah.
I'm like so good. I'm not happy all the time, but I'm able to, I talk about, it's like a floor. So when I fall down, I can look around, and I can look out the windows, and I can still see there's sun outside. When I don't have medication and I fall down, I fall through a trap door into a basement, and the trap door closes, and there is no hope in sight. There is no way out. And it's the crazy lie of depression is that I feel like I've never been happy.
Yeah.
It feels like it's never happened, even if I was happy last week. And that's just the lie of depression, right?
It is, because I know when I'm dealing with somebody with that, and if you try to say, but last week you said, and it's like, but when they're in that low, in my world, it's that low emotional baseline. It's like, well, I wasn't being honest, or no, I didn't say. And it's like, okay. Because then it's like, but you said this, and it's like, at that point, the person, that's where I love it. It's like, okay, that person just wants to be seen. They want to be acknowledged. They just want
validated.
Somebody, they're validated, not fixed, and it's so hard, right?
I bet. Yeah. I bet. Yeah. Oh, but it's huge. It's amazing what just a healing touch like that can do.
Yeah.
Just have someone see you and say, you're not bad.
Okay. See, this is beautiful. I don't even want to jump topics, but it's like, for the sake of time, how do we do a nice segue from this to a girl with broccoli for hair?
Oh, it's
I loved
so
your
good.
book. Yeah, I mean, I read it. It's awesome. I felt a little funny reading it just for myself. I didn't have a kid around.
It's for you. It's for all of us. No.
Exactly right. No, talk about that. So what
Yeah.
what led you to write a children's book?
So I wrote Broccolipunzle in college, which is kind of crazy. I wrote it for a children's literature class.
Oh, wow.
And I was actually on my first date with my husband. He was just like my best friend at the time. And he said, you should do that for your assignment. I just made it up on the spot. And I thought, okay. And so I did it, and it kind of just traveled around with us through our marriage. And then on my 27th birthday, he gave it to me as a gift with full illustrations. He had our friend who's an animator illustrate it for me.
I love that. Yeah, it looks great.
Yeah. And I ended, anyways, it's just crazy. I can only put it back to God of how this all happened. But it ended up that I used to teach second grade, and I started taking it to elementary schools and presenting about self-acceptance with it. And it wasn't until just, I don't know, a couple months ago that I read this story. And should I give it just a brief plot line?
You do. Yeah, that'd be great.
There's a princess, and she has broccoli for hair, and everybody in the village is trying to eat it, and it's super frustrating for her, and she just wants to be rid of it. She wants to be a normal princess. And she has this fairy godmother show up, and she says, it's a fractured fairy tale.
Yeah, right. She wished she could have met at better circumstances. I love that.
Yeah. I wish she could have met you at a ball or in preparation for a ball. There's all these little fractured fairy tales in there. There's, a golden brick avenue or something. Anyway, she says to her, she's like, you are complaining all the time. I can get rid of your hair if you really want it, but I'm going to give you a day to think about it. And then I'll be back at midnight tomorrow night, and we'll talk. Well, in that day, Broccolipunzle, she walks along the street, and she sees this man, and he just looks like shame, She stops, she talks to him, and she finds out he's hungry. And so she goes into her satchel, and she finds these scissors she's never put there before. So she cuts out some of her broccoli, and she gives it to him for food. Then the rest of that day, she's just giving broccoli out to all these people in the village. She comes back that night, and the fairy godmother's there, and she says, I love my hair. I want to keep it. Fairy godmother's like, okay. And she says, I've always complained about how annoying it is to take care of my hair. I have to sleep in the fridge once a week. I got to trim the wilty ends. I got to wash it. But today I saw how it made other people happy, and that made me happy. And so I want this. And then in the end, it says something like, the villagers could always spot their green-haired hero skipping down Yellow Brick Avenue with magic in her eyes, something in her heart, and scissors in a satchel fit for a princess, or something like that. So she decides, I'm going to do this. This is my life. And my message to kids is, what makes you different makes you powerful.
Yeah.
What makes you different makes you powerful, because if you can just own what you're good at, naturally, what you're born with, you're unstoppable. It's your superpower. Yeah. And I feel like my superpower is, I feel like I love people. I've always loved people. I've been able to communicate with people. I've always been good with people. And I also have had this huge struggle in my life that has given me really big perspective, and I'm really open about it. Yeah. And so to me, that's where the podcast came in play, where I'm like, you know what? I am not the only person out there struggling with anxiety and depression. I'm not the only person that grew up with a bipolar father. I'm not the only person that went through in vitro or whatever circumstances, but I am so cool with talking about it because I know who I am now. Yeah. I know who I am, and I'm not ashamed. And so I really felt God pushing me in that direction to start this podcast, where we look at all sorts of different perspectives of being seen as someone that's gay, being seen someone with a chronic illness. This last weekend, I did an interview with a guy that escaped a Scientology cult.
Oh, wow.
And how compassion and connection saved these people's lives, because it's what we all need. We all need to be seen.
Yeah, no, I love it. And obviously from my perspective as a therapist, the more people talk about their stories, I hear about it over and over again. People emailing me about guests who are pretty open or vulnerable. And for every one, that hears it, there's, or writes me, there's dozens that are hearing it, and it gets spread. And it's just people kind of then get to see you, and you're on the good side of where you maybe didn't ever think you would be. And I love how you're being open about, and you know what, if I kind of have some bad times in the future, at this point, you're going to make it through. Right.
Yeah.
Has anybody ever, super ADD thought here, when Broccolipunzle gives the guy the broccoli, it's raw broccoli, right? I mean, it's not cooked. It's not.
Oh, yeah.
All I thought about was, when I've eaten a lot of raw broccoli, kind of a little gassy later on. So, I mean, I know he was grateful, but I mean, I do want to write a sequel to that book of like the gassy stranger, and I don't know. I haven't worked out the rest of them.
Oh, that's funny.
Okay.
People have said you should write a sequel, but I've never heard that idea. That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
All right. Hey, Julie, where do people find you?
Yeah. So my website is icupodcast.com, and my podcast, ICU, it's on Apple, Stitcher. It's on all the major podcasts, I think, all the free podcasts. And I also do public speaking as well. So if you're interested in that, you can find that on my website as well.
Okay, perfect. And then go watch this on YouTube if you're hearing just the audio of my podcast, and you can see Julie's very cool hat. So I got to get into the merchandise thing. That's I like that.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
Yeah. All right, Julie Lee, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the virtual couch.
So
I'd love to have you
so welcome.
Talk about some of the other things that you've talked about on your podcast. Okay, hang on one second. I'm going to stop. All right, thanks so much.